Imagine this, it's the first month of live e-invoicing in the UAE. The FTA expects structured XML invoices validated in real time, and your compliance team is juggling data from SAP in Dubai and Oracle in Saudi. One system calls it tax code, another calls it VAT type, and the third just a vague column labeled T5. But now, all of this must be transformed into a fully validated real-time Peppermint AE invoice that is submitted to FTA in seconds with no margin of error. Welcome to the new reality. Segregating inconsistent ERP data into e-invoicing ready payloads and doing it at scale. Now, before we jump into the solution, let's unpack the real root of this mess, because it's not just a tech problem, it's a business reality. ERPs are evolved for business operations, not for tax compliance. You adopt different systems when entering new regions. You customize workflows for internal efficiency. You acquire systems through mergers or local offices. But when tax authorities impose machine-readable e-invoicing mandates like Pint AE for UAE or Invoice Now for Singapore, suddenly your ERP differences becomes a liability. And here's what breaks. First, structure incompatibility. Each ERP structure invoice data differently. One treats discounts as a header level and another treats it as a line item. Some track VAT as flags, others as full formulas. Second, timing mismatch. Some systems generate invoices instantly, others run batched postings, real-time e-invoicing out of sync. Third would be inconsistent tax logic. Tax treatments for the same invoice vary per country, and those rules are often hard-coded in different ways across the systems. This results in late filings, penalties, and sleepless nights for your finance and compliance team. So, what do you do when your systems don't align, but the government expects one clean, compliant output? Here's the good news. You don't need to replace every ERP. That's not just expensive, it's operationally risky. What you need is a smart layer on top, a kind of control tower that sees everything, normalizes the mess, and speaks one language to your tax systems. Think of it like hiring a real-time interpreter, but for your invoice data. This control layer would connect to all your ERPs, map their fields to the common format, applies local e-invoicing logic, and prepares everything for submission to FDA. But this theory only gets you halfway. Let's break this down step by step, and let's find out how can you make this work. Now, let's break down how multiple country data segregation works inside an ERP, and how to set it up without breaking your billing flows or exhausting your finance team. Step 1 would be to create a logical folders for each country. Start by setting up legal entities or business units in your ERP, one per country or region. Think of these as clean, isolated folders inside your system. Every invoice, transaction, and tax record for a specific country stays within its respective unit. This separation ensures compliance, simplifies audits, and makes VAT reporting more manageable. Step 2 would be to automate sorting and country-based tagging. Once entities are set, define rules to auto-sort transactions based on country of the customer or supplier, B2B versus B2C transactions, or transaction type. For example, invoices for a customer in France would be mapped as a France entity. Zero-rated exports in UAE would be mapped as UAE entity, marked as export. This tagging is critical for downstream compliance and reporting. Step 3 would be to apply country-specific VAT logic. Each legal entity should carry localized tax logic. This would include VAT rates and exemptions, required invoice fields like TRN in UAE, SIRET in France. Country-specific formats, example Peppermint AE in UAE and XML in Italy. When an invoice is created, the ERP should detect the country and the transaction type, apply the correct VAT treatment automatically, flag any missing data before submission. Step 4 would be to validate before submission. Run a pre-validation on each invoice before it leaves the ERP. Ensure mandatory fields like the VAT number, date, and line totals are present. Validate structure and format based on the country schema. Catch mismatches or missing information early. And this is where tools like Complyance make life easier with real-time validation and AI-powered error suggestions tailored for each country. Step 5 would be to transmit or store based on the mandates. After validation, if the e-invoicing is mandatory, send it to the tax authority or national platform. If it's not required, store it securely in the correct legal entity folder for future reporting. You'll also need to ensure retention policies, access controls, and audit readiness are in place for each country. Once the invoice data is validated, it's time to move into the compliance flow. Here's how the process typically works across most e-invoicing regimes. First, the ERP system will generate an invoice with all the required details like seller and buyer information, tax breakdowns, product lines, and invoice metadata. This invoice is tagged by the business unit or legal entity to keep country-specific records segregated. The ERP converts the invoice into the required structure, usually JSON or HTML, based on the e-invoicing schema for the respective country. Each invoice is classified appropriately: B2B, B2C, export, or intra-company. Local tax logic is applied: rates, exemption, and mandatory field populations. The invoice is then submitted to the designated authority or the national exchange platform through the secure REST APIs, bulk upload systems, or through the accredited intermediaries, depending on the local requirement. This central system would perform the authentication, format validation, and signature verification. If this invoice passes the checks, a unique identifier is generated, a digital signature and QR code may be attached. The validated invoice is returned to your ERP or invoicing system. Some jurisdictions also forward this data automatically to the tax authorities for reporting or pre-filing. Back in your ERP, the validated invoice is finalized and sent to the buyer. Metadata like IRN or status codes are logged. It's pushed into accounts receivable or payable workflows. It's archived securely per local record-keeping requirements. Even with the best intentions, many teams hit the same pitfalls. First would be the hard-coding logic inside the ERPs. Don't bury tax rules inside your ERP. Keep them in a configurable transformation layer. Otherwise, every tax change becomes an ERP project. Second would be the manual formatting. Avoid CSVs or Excel. Automate transformation from the source to the API payload. Third would be the time zone and currency conflicts. Don't forget that time zone mismatches can cut off the logic and batch reconciliation. Also, align the FX treatment if you're consolidating in AED. Now let's wrap it up with what really matters: a single consistent source of truth. You don't need to unify your systems, you just need to unify your data. The tax authorities don't care how many ERPs you use. They only care that your data is clean, accurate, and on time. Compliance helps you build that unified layer without changing your existing setup. If you need help, feel free to check out how Compliance makes multi-ERP compliance simple.